Hello and welcome to CapCity BTC, Sacramento's premier Bitcoin and cryptocurrency group serving Northern California. Enjoy the presentation.
So this meetup is a kind of collaboration between Starfish San Francisco, Starfish Mission, SF Bitcoin and Blockchain Social, as well as the Sacramento Bitcoin Meetup. We're hoping that, as things seem like they're going to be virtual for a while, we can all come together and, bring our communities together in a way that would be really difficult to do in person. Today, we're continuing this thread that has been going on in crypto, especially recently. That is this amazing world of DeFi, or open finance, as is more popularly, noted. There is a lot happening in DeFi, and it can be hard to keep up. So we're hoping that these virtual events are a way for everyone to get to know each other, get to know the people building really cool stuff in the space, as well as directly hear from builders and growers of these projects what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it, as well as just learn the basics about why this space exists at all, if you're new. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first speaker for this event is Joe Ciccolo. He is the founder and CEO of BitAML, and he is an expert when it comes to all things compliance and regulations in crypto, which tend to be unpopular, but are really, really important. So without further ado, Joe, the stage is yours.
Oh, thanks, Gibran. I'll wipe the egg off my face. No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about compliance and regulatory policy matters. I know it's not the most exciting subject in crypto, but it's one that's very important and one we should keep an eye on. And so Gibran and the team are kind enough to ask me to share some updates from time to time, just randomly when we have some extra bandwidth. And so I'm happy to share some of my more recent thoughts on the subject. So for those of you interested or currently involved in some way or form or fashion in the Bitcoin ATM space, there's been a lot of news recently around Bitcoin ATMs. In particular, earlier this month, I think it was June 2nd, I have to check my notes, I think around June 2nd, a company called CipherTrace, which does blockchain analytics or blockchain forensics, released a report that was pretty damning in their eyes as it pertains to the crypto ATMs. And they found that nearly 3/4 of transactions taking place at Bitcoin ATMs resulted in the funds being sent outside of the US. And it's their contention that as a result of those findings and other matters, such as the growth of ATMs just more generally, that's going to be a regulatory point of emphasis, specifically the Bitcoin ATMs going forward. My analysis on that is I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't know where they've been for the past several years. There have been a lot of regulatory Title 31 examinations being conducted of Bitcoin ATMs. That continues. Several of our clients, not a surprise, but also just other friends in the industry we're hearing either at events through the grapevine or people passing notes in class. So these events or these exams continue to be ongoing. Again, not necessarily surprised, but when there's stories like this come out there and analysis is done by companies like CipherTrace, which have a great connection and a great relationship with policymakers and law enforcement, it really only heightens the microscope, so to speak, on the crypto ATM space. So if you're in that space, take that extra time, look through your compliance paperwork, make sure everything's in order. Certainly ask the questions you need to ask, but you definitely want to remain on top of that. So there, in some ways, regulators may feel pressure from stories like this or information like that, and may feel that they want to either get a little bit more aggressive, i.e. conduct more examinations or reach out more often. So keep that in mind and certainly be on your toes. As it pertains to regulators more generally, at the federal level, the IRS, as I mentioned, conducting Title 31 examinations, or what they call it when they look into crypto companies that are registered with FinCEN. They come in and they conduct an examination. They ask for your copies of your AML program. They look at your transactions. They ask lots of questions in person and remote interviews. Those are probably going to resume fairly soon. A lot of those were put on hold. So those that were in the middle of an examination were basically sort of put on the back burner, if you will. So we suspect that those are going to resume in the noticeable future as things begin to be more open and different states go through different phases, and the government's no different. At the state level, we can expect a lot more conversations to resume around state licensing. So I think we talked about this in a previous segment, where many of the states are now revisiting their so-called no action or no opinion statuses, right? So there are several states in which Bitcoin ATM operators, direct traders, those involved in direct wallet-to-wallet, if you will, transactions benefited from so-called no action determinations in many states. It's sort of an unwritten in many states, whereas places like Illinois or Texas, there's guidance. In some states, there's not, and you merely reach out to the regulator, and they generally say something like, "Well, what's your business?" And then after a conversation, they say, "Well, no action at this time, but stay tuned." A lot of the states we found just before COVID started were really ramping up their inquiries into whether or not to license and in what manner. So New Jersey had a lot of conversations. Here in California, which I'll come back to in a second, Massachusetts, Nevada, Alabama, just a handful of states all over the map, geographic, political, and otherwise, we're starting to have conversations about where they wanted to move regulation. So definitely want to keep tuned to that, no matter what state you operate in or maintain a business or business license. I'm told in California, and I know that we've had the pleasure of having Ali Medina join us and give us an update from her perspective. My conversations with her lately have been a little bit more sort of positive, in the sense that the state regulation in California is not really moving forward through the legislature as they thought it would. And so obviously COVID played a big role in that, and reprioritizing the budget. And now my understanding is the California budget is predicated a lot on borrowing money from the federal government. So that's usually not a good sign if you want to increase in enforcement or budgeting, or put in place unfunded mandates such as money transmitter licenses for crypto companies. So from her perspective, and again, this is secondhand, and you're welcome to follow up with Ali. I'm sure we have some resources, but it seemed to me that she wasn't confident that we would see anything in the way of a state license in California anytime this year, and probably not anytime next year in 2021. So, but stay tuned. Things have changed, and there's always conversations to be had, and we never know when things will get back to quote unquote normal here in California and elsewhere. And then finally, on a more positive note, real quick, and I'll wrap up, and certainly happy to answer questions later on if Gibran can corral those in our Zoom chat over there on the right-hand side of the screen. I thought it was interesting, some of the latest remarks from Kenneth Blanco, who's the director of FinCEN. His remarks lately have been very favorable compared to the past in terms of talking about crypto. They seem much more collaborative, much more positive in nature when remarking upon some of the things that he and his examiners have seen in the crypto space. And maybe this automatic thought process, oh, crypto bad, or crypto evil, illegal transactions, is maybe wiping away. And now it's getting more into sort of, okay, not everybody's the same. Let's not stereotype or paint with a broad brush, but rather let's get to know who we're doing an examination of. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, where he talked about a lot of favorable things, like some of the ways that Bitcoin ATM operators are helping to thwart scams and elder abuse and things like that. So yeah, if you see opportunities to reach out to customers, obviously preventing fraud is a great business tool on its own, not to mention you're going to feel good about doing the right thing. But definitely keep those things in mind. And it's doesn't always have to be bad news. So it's nice to see that Director Blanco and some of his examiners have had some pretty positive experiences talking to some crypto companies out there. And hopefully, if you do get subjected to examination, hopefully you're one of those shining stars as well in the crypto space. So, all right, that's enough from the compliance guy, Gibran. But if anybody has any questions, I'll be here. If for some reason we get cut off or I have to jump early, by all means, find a way to message me. Or we'll get in touch somehow. But thanks, Gibran.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons like people have a shining like record is because you're helping them be compliant and abide by regulations. So
Thank you.
what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Would you like Twitter, email?
Sure. I'm maybe a little bit old-fashioned. I prefer email, so I'll just put in my email address there. So if anybody has any questions, whoops, maybe I'll send it to everyone and not just you, Gibran, but I'll work out that technical snafu. But yeah, definitely reach out to me by email. There we go, Joe at bitaml.com, and I'm happy to set up a phone call and we can talk one-on-one with your compliance questions. And if you need pointed in the right direction for resources or anything like that, even if I can't answer the question, I always pride myself on being able to help folks out. So never a bother, especially from this group. Always happy to help.
Cool. Thank you, Joe. I do have one question.
Thank you.
That
All
you
right.
mentioned it seemed like that there may be a turn in sentiment about crypto is evil and it needs to be heavily regulated and all that. Who are the people? Have you seen certain organizations pushing for that narrative to change that have been really effective at what they're doing, or are you just seeing legislators kind of learn that on their own?
And I honestly think it's just time. It's, you know, it's like the old saying, there's no cure for a hangover, it's just time, right? So I think that, you know, we're closing the education gap, and I think, you know, it's a lot of grassroots in the crypto space. As I think we all know, there's really no sort of organized marketing machine like there is at some of these big banks, or you know, I don't think we really have a lobbying, you know, presence, certainly not one of note in the crypto space. And not to besmirch the reputation of some organizations that are trying their, you know, trying their darndest, like Coin Center and Chamber of Digital Commerce and others, but you know, in order of magnitude, we have a relatively small voice. So I think it has more to do with just time going by, conversations are happening, and I really think that participation by traditional banks in crypto has really helped to move that needle, whether we're talking about USAA and Fidelity, and then fast forward to, you know, dare I say it, JP Morgan Chase starting to bank a pair of crypto companies that we all know. So I think that starts to move the conversation, and it really moves the needle in terms of legitimacy from one end to the other. And I think we all know, because we all got involved at one point. We didn't know anything about crypto, right? Unless Satoshi's on here and I don't know about it. We all found out on our own, and we went down that rabbit hole, and we took the time to ask questions and be open-minded. It seems like bankers and policymakers were maybe not as forward-looking as all of you, but they're going to get there, and if they're not already, they're starting down that rabbit hole. So just continue to be you. What I'd say, and one more thing I think is important, Gibran, when I talk to policymakers, law enforcement, bankers, what I tell them, the same thing is, like, if you find someone at a crypto meetup, if you meet someone that knows something about crypto, whoever he or she is, ask them questions, because they love nothing more than talking about crypto. You will honestly not find a nicer person, right, than someone who's interested in crypto, and they will stand there and answer all your questions, usually until you run out of questions. And so don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think if we're all open on the other end of the equation to receiving those questions and giving folks feedback, then I think that in some small part, if we all did that across the crypto space, I hope that's not too campy, you know, I think we can really continue to move that needle towards acceptance.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good point. And like, yeah, we'll get there. It'll just take some time, I suppose. But it's really interesting to see how things are changing. So that's been actually really, really cool. If anybody has questions that come up for Joe, you can leave them in the chat or email him directly. His email is in the chat box. Thank you so much, Joe, for like giving us all of our answers when it comes to compliance and regulations. I don't know anybody else.
Well, I'll try. But thank you, Gibran. I appreciate it.
Cool. So our next speaker is the reason that many of the people may be here when it comes to DeFi. He is the head of community at Zerion, and he's been involved in blockchain since 2017. He's previously co-founded a platform called DeBay, which was a non-fungible token marketplace. And he has also led strategy at Wolfram Alpha, and all around is a really, really cool person. who, if you notice in his background, it's really dark. It's because he's in a completely different time zone than I think most of us, and he still is here with us to share all of his insights. Everyone give it up for Abi from Zerion. Everyone's muted, so you can't hear the applause. But
Cheers, Shivran. Thank you so much. Great intro. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Wow, it's quite crazy actually, because I remember back in 2017 when I was first getting into crypto, like my first exposure to crypto was attending a couple meetups, I think by Starfish and SF Blockchain. So it's pretty nice how the tables have turned, and kind of 2 years later, I find myself here as a speaker. And I think it's a similar contrast, because back then in 2017, we were in a situation where Bitcoin was approaching its all-time high. Everything was all about ICOs, and almost every other person in San Francisco is talking about toppling Wall Street. So we are back again in a similar situation this time, but with DeFi, where you can see legacy financial systems undergoing a huge shift globally. And in general, I think there's a huge shift in notion just towards DeFi. And that's why I'm here to just give a little bit of an intro on DeFi. And overall, I think my talk is geared more towards a little bit of DeFi beginners, people who know a little bit of the space, but have been wanting to explore a little more. And I'll also kind of address the other audience in the room, which is more of people who haven't been exposed to DeFi at all. So I hope I can do justice to everyone here. All right, to just get it started, what is DeFi essentially? I'm pretty sure all of us here have stumbled across DeFi in the recent months, especially as like the total value locked in DeFi has approached $1.5 billion today. And with the recent yield farming craze happening on Compound, there's a lot of hype around DeFi. But in very, very simple terms, DeFi is financial software built on the blockchain. And this can be pieced together on top of each other like money Legos. And the core component that facilitates this is what we call smart contracts. And for those who don't know what smart contracts are programs that run on the blockchain essentially. And these programs are set to be executed by programmers when certain conditions are met. So this functionality is kind of what enables us to piece together different financial software in DeFi and eventually build really complex derivatives and financial protocols. And I mean, if you're still scratching your head, don't worry, I was there as well. I actually just went into the DeFi space 4 months back. The co-founder of Zerion is a upperclassman of mine. So he kind of got me back into the crypto space by asking me to help him out with some growth hacking and community development. So that's where I am. But in very simple terms, I think the best way to explain what DeFi is to total beginners is to identify the 3 main use cases that we see today. One, borrowing and lending. I think for borrowing and lending, that's probably the fastest growing sector that you see in DeFi right now. Similar to a bank, users can deposit money and other users can earn interest from like people borrowing that money. But unlike a bank, in this case, the assets are all digital and smart contracts are what connect the lenders to borrowers. And because you don't have a bank anymore, there is no middleman. And because there's no middleman, lenders can earn higher returns in general. And there's also more transparency because people can understand the risks involved as everything is in the blockchain. I think the second key part is what we call stablecoins. And I think to a lot of crypto native users, they don't really understand what stablecoins are because for them, crypto is all about volatility, holding, and going to the moon. But I think just a simple explanation of what a stablecoin is just take an example of DAI, which is a stablecoin issued by MakerDAO. And DAI is a stablecoin is always pegged to US dollars. So it's backed by Ethereum, pegged to US dollar. One DAI is usually around $1. And for every DAI out there, there's around $1.50 of Ethereum locked into the MakerDAO smart contract as collateral. That's number 2, stablecoins. I think the last component that's really important, but probably less than the first 2, is decentralized exchanges. And DEXs, I think we don't really need to explain too much about them. They're just a simple exchange that uses smart contracts to kind of enforce the trading rules. And there's no intermediary. There's generally no KYC. And it usually is, super hard to parse if you've ever tried going to a DEX as, a basic crypto user. So kind of going from these 3 main use cases, you realize that the DeFi is interoperable, programmable, and composable, and you can essentially modify, combine, or create powerful new financial tools out of these money Legos that we see. And kind of just like building in even more context, contrasting this with our traditional financial system. Speaking from personal experience in Buenos Aires, I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina right now. When I came here in January, $1 was around 77 pesos in the blue rate. As of today, it's shot up 55% to around 120 pesos per dollar. And that is crazy because you add that with capital controls and you realize that every policeman, every doctor, every engineer in Argentina is effectively seeing their salary and savings dwindle every month, not just for the past few months, but for the past decade. So that is one issue with the traditional financial system. It's exclusive. The second issue that I want to talk about is the fact that it's expensive. And I think a lot of us who've dealt with wire transfers, $35 plus fees, and kind of add to that all the rumors that, you know, bond yields and interest rates might go negative next year. You see that, you know, as it is, traditional financial system doesn't offer attractive savings as well as being expensive. And finally, I mean, I don't need to talk about how inefficient in general it is compared to what we see in crypto and DeFi. I mean, if you want to move to a new country, good luck getting some of your credit history or something transferred. I've faced that myself. I've moved to 7 countries in the past 3 years as a student. So it's pretty terrible, but like, thank goodness for Charles Schwab, else I wouldn't have survived. So their debit card comes in handy. All right. So now to just like better understand kind of what DeFi is, I would say the distinctions are quite clear. Like one, the operations of like DeFi protocols itself, they aren't necessarily managed by an institution or employees, which is pretty straightforward as it is usually managed by the smart contract. Number two, DeFi is inclusive, and this means that anyone with an internet connection can instantly access a DeFi protocol or service, or save money in DAI or invest in a compound liquidity pool. So that is number two, just it's inclusive. And I guess kind of like additional points that I've not really mentioned here is the fact that what DeFi really provides is a flexible user experience, because what you're seeing right now is that if you don't like an interface or a specific dApp, before you didn't have a choice, but now you could go build one. You could like integrate one with an external API, or you could just kind of come up with your own protocol. And this is one other key component. And I think like kind of like the final key component is the fact that it's highly interoperable. So we are building new DeFi apps on top of each other. So in a nutshell, DeFi is reinventing global finance faster than the Fed can print money. And by fast, I mean really fast in the past 2 months. If you'd paid close attention to the previous slide, you would have noticed that the slide was from 2019. And that was intentional. That's because I just can't fit all the new things that's come out in 2020 within that one graphic. And I mean, just to give you a few examples, like now in 2020, like DeFi has grown exponentially to include like spot trading, smart contracts and protocols. You have money market instruments, you have margin trading, you have ETFs, options, futures, fixed income protocols, all sort of things. And like there was no way I could ever fit all of that. But this is just like a quick kind of intro on what financial instruments you currently have in DeFi. And also interesting to note is most of the projects I've mentioned here are projects that were bootstrapped with 1 or 2 members with almost no funding. And just to give an example, Curve Finance was one of the projects which was just founded by one founder, and they had around $112 million in volume just last week alone. So that's the kind of scale and impact that you're seeing right now at this early stage with DeFi. So in summary, this is a cool little graphic, still not released. We're bringing it out in a blog post tomorrow, but it kind of shows and contrasts DeFi with traditional finance and fintech. And one way we can really drive this logic deeper is to kind of look at how the internet disrupted every single industry, including music, commerce, and education. And that theory that we use is the aggregation theory. I'm assuming a few of you are familiar here, but essentially, what internet did is it decreased the distribution cost of a new product, and hence you kind of created this wave of new supply. And when that happened, the core business challenge shifted from how to get the product to the consumer to how to kind of like compete within a consumer's mind and limited attention within these existing aggregated platforms. So that's the kind of shift you saw when the internet came about. And I think we are seeing a very similar trend in finance, where the supply and distribution of financial services and like even money itself within DeFi has become modularized in a way. And what this means is now that anyone can create money or a new financial product with almost zero supply costs, zero barriers to entry. And again, kind of bringing the example of Curve, just as, you know, a simple example of how a one-man team could scale so fast. Now, kind of like, you know, coming to a few problems that I see in DeFi. And these are the key problems that we at Zerion looked to tackle when even coming out with the product. So for a long time, there was no single place to really invest and manage your DeFi portfolio. That was probably the biggest factor constraining user experience for DeFi, because as the number of financial primitives, as number of the instruments scaled, and as the number of wallets increased, I think the need for a simplified single place to access and monitor your DeFi really like also increased. And secondly, we've noticed that there's like a generally steep learning curve associated with DeFi. And like just scrolling through DeFi Twitter or scrolling through all the dexes, like you would probably get a migraine by the end of the day. That's just how much lingo and words and how much to just stay on top of things. If I go for a road trip for a weekend and I come back, like I just can't keep up with what's happened over a weekend. And that's kind of like the scale of growth as well as the learning curve that you see with DeFi. And the last two things, pretty self-explanatory. There's, I think, a huge need for accurate portfolio tracking. I'll talk a little bit more about this in detail later, but as of now, it's almost impossible actually to accurately track your DeFi portfolio. And the need for this is only going to increase even more as we scale, as we see the space scale. And like the final point is more on the lack of insights, analytics, user personalization, as well as kind of like getting all this information in one place that we see. And this creates a disadvantage where, you know, users aren't sure on how to put their DeFi best to work. And they kind of like know there's a lot of different things to do, but they don't really know how to put it best to work. So these are the key problems that we really found in the space while setting up Zerion. So these are the main design goals that we really had when we set up Zerion. And we set out to build Zerion with like the main intention of designing it to be like your DeFi bank, except that you have complete access to everything you own. So I think that was like the key distinction. So kind of like number one, Zerion is non-custodial, where our most important goal was to ensure that users own their own assets. And we plan on remaining non-custodial in the near future, in the foreseeable future, because we actually didn't also like the direction that a lot of centralized exchange were going. Not going to name drop people, but I think in general, the direction that a lot of centralized exchanges were going was not something that we were a fan of, and DeFi doesn't really sync with that as well. So that was our first design goal. And the next two design goals was to mainly protect people's privacy. So like we want to make sure we don't collect, like we collect as little information about users as possible. And that is also integrated within our platform in a lot of different ways, which I'll talk about later. And finally, we wanted to provide a user experience with as little friction as possible. And we've been perfecting the system since we launched in early January 2019. Kind of just going quickly over the product. Since then, we've scaled our user base significantly and we've launched several new updates. We also have Zerion's mobile apps on Android and iOS, which are available in 6 different languages. And our web app is also completely mobile optimized. So you can actually buy, sell, trade, DeFi, and monitor all your assets from your mobile, like from your browser itself without even needing our app. So that is kind of where we are on the product. Now, kind of like moving towards the main topic of why I'm here to speak today, and that is to illustrate our 3 main goals for the near future. And this was a hard task to kind of comprise, to really to present everything within like the time span I have. But I guess like the first most important goal we have is to make Zerion the simplest place to DeFi, to invest in DeFi. And to illustrate this goal, like I'm going to show you a quick kind of product demo along with like a few additional features that we've been testing. And this would kind of give you a better idea of where we are in terms of our product and a lot of different things that you could do with our product. So as you can see, this is your Zerion dashboard right now. And the first thing to notice, and the first thing to notice is the tab on our left where you can see all your connected wallets as well as your read-only addresses. And if some of you who are new to crypto don't really have a wallet, you don't want to go through all the web plugins and seed phrases and all of that, we also have the option of you being able to connect a Fortmatic wallet. And what a Fortmatic wallet is it doesn't require any seed phrases. You can sign up for it instantly with a mobile number or an email account. And it's actually non-custodial. They don't have access to your seed phrase, nothing like that. And that is an alternative option that a lot of users use because it's just way too simple. You can quickly just create an email and there you go. You can start buying crypto. And yeah, in terms of wallets, we decided to give users we decided to support almost every wallet available because for us, it's more about giving users the option to choose based on their preference of what kind of wallet they want to use. So we support almost every wallet available, and we use Wallet Connect as well to connect your preferred mobile wallet. And kind of moving on, as part of our design goals, it's worth noting that we personalize your experience while maintaining privacy. So how this works is a lot of users actually use Zerion as a homepage or as a dashboard that's always on. And what they like to do is follow a lot of different accounts and also have, our power users usually average between 5 and 10 wallets, personally per person. So they often have a lot of wallets to track, and there is no other platform right now in the entire DeFi space that tracks up to, I haven't even tried our limit. I've tried up to 40, 50 accounts and it still doesn't crash. So you can simultaneously track this many accounts. And I think the cool part is that all the data around what wallets you have is actually stored locally in your browser. So we don't create any database on our side. There's literally no information of your public address, even though a public address is not really something that one would consider private. I think we really want to make sure that privacy is on our first goal. So that is a cool thing to note on how we actually show these. And next time you come to the browser, it would automatically be on here. And yeah, and kind of moving on, at the top of the page, we display your Ethereum address. You can also create what we call a 3-box profile, which is an external integration that makes it more, social media-like, just humanizes it a little more, where you can actually connect a bunch of social media accounts and do a bunch of cool things in there. And something really cool that a lot of users also don't really know at first glance is that right now, if you don't have any crypto, we actually have a fiat on-ramp, pretty seamless, which enables you to buy crypto with one click from over 160 different countries. And we use MoonPay as our preferred partner for that. So that is something that's pretty nifty as well, in the sense that we want Zerion to be your first place, your last place, as well as everything in between if you ever need to access DeFi. So this is something else to note for all of you users looking to check out Zerion in a bit after this. And yeah, kind of moving on, the top right, as normal, as you can see, kind of shows you the total value and a lot of other important stats. I have a few test accounts here that I've put there to show you in a little more detail, kind of all the things that you can see within your dashboard. So right now you can see your total value, and just so you know, this is one account that's connected, and this account has the user who uses this account has done a bunch of different things within all DeFi assets. So you can have a whole glimpse of liquidity pools that he's probably contributed to. You can see loans he's taken and anything else he's done, staking, synthetics assets, pulled together, no loss lottery pools. Yeah, so this is our chart, and this is kind of how everything works. And also, one cool thing we do is we provide detailed analytics on a lot of things. So say you have a synthetics pool, we can actually open it up and you can see collateral ratios. You can see all that cool stuff like debt, collateral, how much synthetics you have escrowed. So it's really kind of targeted both to power users who use this. By the way, these are real users who manage huge funds on Zerion. So it's tailored both to a power user as well as an introductory user who just wants to use this to track their performance over time. And yeah, we have currency support for a bunch of different currencies. A lot of users did request us to actually have support for Ethereum as a tracking currency, so that's pretty popular. And you can one click instantly export all the accounts you have connected here to your Zerion mobile app and then track it on there as well. So it's kind of like a seamless experience to and fro everywhere. Moving on to different features, our history tab is super, actually one of the most used tabs, because especially a lot of power users who do a lot of trades love our filtering mechanism, where you can filter by a bunch of different parameters, where if you put ETH, you have transactions related to ETH. If you want to put send, you can see all the transactions you've sent. So this really helps you, filter and get a better glimpse at what all you've done. And one-click download as a CSV, and we also have a partnership with Token Tax to help you at the end of the year if you want to do your taxes to figure this out. Again, this is not tax advice, so please don't call me out on that. And then moving on, yeah, just kind of quickly run over the other features. For Save, what we use right now is, what we have right now is where users can deposit a variety of tokens for lending. And you can see all the information you probably need, each one's interest rates, the amount deposited, and the interest earned per token. And what we use right now is Compound's protocol. So you have all of that mentioned within the FAQ here. Let me actually try finding a live page of what the Save tab looks like. Yeah, so here's an example of what the Save tab looks like. You can kind of see your interest earned. You can instantly deposit more. This is not my account, so I can't access it, but I can read what all he's done before. So that's our Save tab. Our Exchange tab is pretty nifty. A lot of users actually don't realize what goes on under the hood. They think it's some kind of a custodial thing where we take a commission. But what it essentially does is it enables you to directly exchange and swap your tokens without leaving Zerion's interface. So pretty much any token with any other token that you want to swap or exchange, you can do it. And the cool thing is what goes under the hood. We automatically select the decentralized exchange with the best deal while you do this. And we are connected to Uniswap, Kyber, and 0x, as well as a bunch of other decentralized exchanges. And if none of them have the best deal, we actually split the order across multiple if needed to give you the best deal. And for that, we use 0x's version 3 API. So that is some really cool stuff as well. You can see a lot of information about slippage, transaction fees, and let me see if I can get a view of what happens if you actually try to exchange. But it's a pretty cool feature, and you technically don't even have to leave our tab again to swap your tokens. Again, quickly moving on to pools. The pools is where you can add liquidity pools to Uniswap or Banker. So this is to help you earn rewards, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to Borrow. The Borrow tab is where you're able to take out collateralized loans through Compound, or Maker if you want loans through DAI. So this is pretty nifty, where you can actually see your expected collateral amount. You can see your APR rate. You can see loan history, a bunch of other things. And if your utilization ratio hits something dangerous, you would actually get instant push notifications, assuming you've actually subscribed for push notifications, and your mobile also has push notifications. So we want to make sure that we're kind of really helping you stay on top of your DeFi investments across platforms. So yeah, now that we've gone over the key features, I'd like to kind of briefly introduce what we've been working on recently. And we realized that as the number of DeFi protocols increased, the derivatives, the pools, interest-bearing assets, everything together as they're increasing, it's quite impossible actually for users, especially new crypto native users who are exploring DeFi, to get a grasp of all the instruments available. So as part of this, we came up, and this is a beta version, by the way, and this is an unreleased read-only version of what we call our Explore DeFi section, where you can actually now see and filter a lot of different DeFi opportunities by category. And if you actually go into a specific category, for instance, in this case, I'm looking at token sets, you can actually filter it by their market cap, by their historical return, and directly invest within that without having to go to token sets interface. So for instance, for those of you who don't know what token sets is, it's a really cool automated crypto management strategy, essentially. So as a simple example, if you look at the ETH-20 MA crossover yield set, what this is it takes Ethereum's 20-day moving average, and if the 20-day moving average falls below, if Ethereum falls below its 20-day moving average, it reduces your losses and instantly rebalances your underlying assets to compound. So now you hold a stable coin that's earning interest, and when Ethereum moves above its 20-day moving average again, it converts it back to wrapped Ethereum, which is basically a one-on-one representation of Ethereum. So this means that compared to simply hodling Ethereum, you have similar token sets for Bitcoin as well. Compared to simply hodling Bitcoin or Ethereum, if you put it into an automated kind of a rebalancing asset management strategy like this, your returns are definitely going to be longer, assuming crypto, increases over time. So that is another cool thing. And this is only a read-only version. Our next step, this is a small glimpse into our future design that's coming out sometime next month with dark mode and a bunch of other cool stuff. But the next step is to have something like Coinbase where you have this landing page, and these landing pages can be customized for a bunch of people, including for social trading sets and for synthetic assets, for a lot of different assets, where if you come in from the internet, you can, from any link, you can instantly buy or sell on here, without having, and instantly kind of connect your wallet. There's no sign up process involved. There's no complicated UI involved, but it's as simple as it can be. And this is all stored in your wallet. It's all non-custodial. There's no commissions that Zerion really takes. And all we do is, provide you as the aggregated interface with all of this. So yeah, this is kind of a sneak peek into that. And something else I wanted to quickly show is how easy also the buying experience on our mobile app is. And I didn't want to go over the hassle of sharing my screen, so I just made it into a prototype. But this is actually live right now. It's the same, it's similar token set to what we showed earlier, but this is the RSI 6040. So it looks at the relative strength index oscillator indicator, and if that goes below 40 points, I believe it rebalances to compound USDC. So how simple it is to buy on, oops, seems to be getting frozen. Yeah, so once you click buy, you can choose what crypto you want to buy it in, and it's getting frozen. Maybe I should forward this for a little later. 1 sec. Yeah, and that 3 steps in, and you're already at your review page. If you're an advanced user and you want to really look at manual gas and set your own slippage, you can do that as well right from your app. And all you got to do is buy. All you got to do then is approve your transaction. We're using Trust Wallet in this case, connected to your mobile. So once you've given it permission, it comes back to this page where you can review everything, and all the information is presented right here. And once you click on buy, there you go. Your transaction is broadcasted. Usually takes around 10 to 30 seconds. After that, you're done. And the page updates itself, and you can now see your balance, your return, your underlying assets, and all of that. And do realize that, like, if you're a DeFi native user, a lot of this information is very, very useful. But right now, you just can't get this in a centralized place unless you go to TokenSet's website to look at this specifically. So yeah, that was kind of around our first goal. Our second goal is to provide precise portfolio tracking. And I think around this, I briefly mentioned this earlier, but if you just take a look at different wallets here right now, and these are all different Ethereum-based wallets, you can see that it's quite hard to accurately track your DeFi portfolio. These are all from the same address, tracked within a 5-minute window on 5 different DeFi interfaces. And you can see how the values and the graphs and everything listed is completely different. Why? Because there's 2 problems. One is that obviously interfaces that are connected to more protocols, they would show more accurate figures, because with DeFi, you have a lot more protocols being added every single day that if you don't really have a price tracking for them on your wallet, you just don't include them in the total balance. So that is one of that. And the second one is from a user perspective, just finding precise portfolio data is also hard, but what's harder enough is how this portfolio data is actually presented. So there's a lot of debates going on right now, especially among portfolio aggregators, on what kind of accounting to use for showing, returns on hodling versus returns on versus return on investing in liquidity pools. I think there's this debate of cost basis accounting versus kind of how you show it, especially with Ethereum's value changing over time. So what we do is we continue to solve this problem by kind of updating our graphs, including detailed investment breakdowns by different positions, helping you export your transactions and whatnot. And also we are looking to we're actually currently looking to integrate more advanced financial tools and instruments that's to kind of help tailor power users usage. So that is something else that's also like part of our bigger goals. And our final goal is to fuel the growth of the DeFi ecosystem as we know it. And I think this is something that really deserves a bigger explanation, because coming back to our earlier slide, we realize that DeFi in theory is supposed to be interoperable, programmable, and composable. But what we see is that the reality is actually couldn't be farther from that. As you can see on the image to the side right now, the space is completely fragmented in general. Portfolio, like the reality is that like we exist on the user aggregation layer. So for us, integrating all these new protocols is becoming quite complicated because there are no standards in the place for DeFi. And integrating DeFi is just by itself quite hard. So we find our developers often, just fully time consumed into integrating new protocols every day. And to give an example of how big of a problem this actually is, if a new protocol, for instance, rolled out new updates, tracking your portfolio would become a mess because it would break down your existing portfolio information and your historical information would get screwed. So that is a big issue. And like, you don't want your historical information to look like a crazy blip or something just, crazy happened back there. So yeah, just like think back to the earlier slide where we noticed how one example address is actually different. There have been several attempts to solve this problem in DeFi, but none have directly solved the problem of composability that we see in terms of being integration friendly, not only to us, but to any DApp who chooses to integrate. So to address this problem, we came out with a DeFi SDK and we rolled this out around beginning of April, I believe. And what this essentially is a set of open source smart contracts that allow you to integrate with the rest of the DeFi ecosystem using a single library. And in simpler terms for DeFi SDK's infrastructure, you have the main smart contract for DeFi SDK, you have multiple protocol adapters for each protocol out there, and these adapters exist to standardize the interactions and to parse user balances for a specific DeFi protocol. So that's a lot of information, but let me try to unwrap that a little more. Just for instance, right here, you see a CDAI token that is wrapped on Compound Uniswap, and that is the one uni you see on the left side. In order to better understand what's going on behind the scenes, you would have to know the underlying assets. But right now, you really can't know the underlying assets because there is no standardized way of determining it. With DeFi SDK, you can parse that, okay, first, it consists of Ethereum, and then also some CDAI, which can be further unwrapped by DeFi SDK into DAI. And then you can understand what's going on under the hood. So this is like a simple example of how this helps unwrap complex DeFi assets. And this is not even a complex DeFi asset, like compared to a lot more out there. And like as of now, we've released a read-only version of DeFi SDK, and this allows you to parse user balances. But what's coming next pretty soon actually is interactive adapters. And this will be a game changer where a deposit and withdraw function will also be added. So as the name kind of implies, the deposit function will help enable you to charge users and give the money to the protocol, while the withdraw function would do the reverse. And all of this happening with no assets being held by DeFi SDK at any point in time. So kind of like a simple example of cross-protocol interactions, which are now enabled by DeFi SDK. Say someone wants to purchase a Uniswap DAI token using their CDAI locked in Compound. Without DeFi SDK, this transaction would actually need over 6 or 7 separate transactions. But with DeFi SDK, all of this happens within one transaction. And that's how much it's actually changed how transactions work. Where under DeFi SDK now, money from CDAI will go to DAI. Half of that money would go to Compound and be exchanged for Ether. And then you can use another adapter for Uniswap pools that would deposit Ether and DAI within the same transaction. Now, that might have made a lot of sense, or it might have not. I'm not a technical guy either, so I was kind of reading off a script there, to be honest, but this is basically what we do. I trust our co-founders. 2 of our 3 co-founders are apparently some math global competition winners, so that is kind of what goes on under the hood, just to give you a simple overview. And yeah, kind of like the benefits for interfaces and wallets that integrate with us. Like it's a single library to integrate user balances across many different protocols, right? So you don't really have to choose between integrating a specific protocol like Compound, but you can actually get all of it in a single integration now. So that is one of the, I think, main benefits that interfaces and wallets stand to really gain. Another benefit is automatic upgrades. So currently, most protocols do claim that they're permissionless, but they keep iterating on their protocols. And hence, like by using DeFi SDK, now all we would need to do is upgrade the protocol adapter for the specific protocol. And for this, right now, protocols who are integrated with us, we all have our dev chats with them. And whenever this happens, we usually just request them to update it themselves, or we do a simple update on our end. And the final thing is that all of the new protocols would now come to you if you integrate DeFi SDK with zero development costs. So your DApp can work instantly with these protocols. So that is, like, I think, a really cool, useful feature also for reducing barriers to entry for other DApps who are looking to get into the space. So as of now, we released DeFi SDK in April. We've received a great response from the community, a lot of really good publications that cover us. And as of now, we support almost all DeFi protocols. This is not an exhaustive list that I mentioned here, couldn't fit it here again. And we have at least 5 different projects using DeFi SDK. Just give you a simple overview. MyDeFi, which is another DeFi dashboard that we acquired a few months back, they use DeFi SDK under the hood. DeFi Market Cap, some of you might have come across it. It's also actually developed by 2 of our co-founders. It's kind of like CoinMarketCap, but for DeFi, and we use DeFi SDK under the hood to determine market caps and prices for more complex financial derivatives. And Frontier uses DeFi SDK for a few integrations, and DApp Pocket is one of the early stage companies that actually used and benefited from the third point that I mentioned earlier, which was zero development cost. And they integrated DeFi SDK voluntarily without us even asking, because it helped suit their purpose. So that's kind of like where we are right now with DeFi SDK. So in summary, DeFi SDK is fully on chain, it's open source, and it's free to use. And I think with interactive adapters being rolled out soon, like this would in a way contribute towards enabling the whole premise of money Legos to finally be true. So yeah, I'd like to conclude by giving a background about the company itself. The original co-founders have been around in the DeFi space since 2016. They initially helped other companies like Nexo in building their smart contracts. And I think they were mainly focused on technical consulting in Ethereum. But then towards the end of 2018, they did notice that the DeFi space was picking up and there was a need for a product like this. So the 3 co-founders decided to get together, and we raised a $2 million seed round from Placeholder Ventures, Blockchain.com Ventures, and Gnosis in December 2019. And as of now, we are a completely remote team of 15 young people, mostly between 20 and 22. Mostly between 20 and 23, based across the Bay Area, Argentina, South Africa, Russia, Ukraine, and Lithuania. And DeFi, we believe, is here to stay, and we're scaling along with it. So if you're a crypto user looking to get into DeFi, if you're a cab driver in Argentina looking for a way to hedge your pesos against hyperinflation, if you're tired of negligible savings rates in your savings account, and if you're anything in between, like do give DeFi a look and do give Zerion a look. I think there's a lot of value that's going to come out from this space as we're marching towards the next stage of hypergrowth, essentially. So yeah, thank you.
Everyone is muted, so you can't hear their applause, but thank you so much.
Beautiful.
I think this perfectly fulfills the idea of this event. When it comes to creating a user-friendly experience for DeFi, I haven't seen anybody do it at the level that you guys are doing it at, and it's really, really, really exciting. I won't.
Yeah, quick shout out, just join our Discord. We have an active beta testing group there. A lot of cool people in the space, and I think it's a good place to kind of get first updates on what we roll out and what the DeFi space rolls out in general. So do that. Awesome. Thanks, Gibran.
We have a lot of questions that have been piling up in the chat. So we'll start getting through them. If you want to leave your Discord link in the chat, people can use that to join the group. But we'll start with some questions, starting from the very top. Somebody asked, it seems like some of these may have been answered during your presentation, but we'll keep it going. Somebody asks, how do we add our own Lego to the stack as dApp developers?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. And I might not be the best person to ask that to, but what I do know right now is that as a developer, you don't really have that much to gain from this, but as a protocol or as a dApp yourself looking to integrate DeFi SDK into your existing stack, you will benefit a lot more. I think we're rolling out an API for Zerion soon, which actually might be more useful because using the API, you can now query user balances pretty easily. You can query different protocol balances, query a bunch of other stuff as well. I think that is probably more useful to your use case than using DeFi SDK yourself. But do join our Discord and go to our developers chat for that, please.
Somebody says, can you name a few DeFi exchanges that we can access if we want to swap BTC for ETH or some other crypto? Are the fees less than those on Binance or Coinbase? This may be a good spot to also, re-mention Zerion's ability for you to swap tokens.
Sorry, where is the question? I kind of missed half of what you said.
Oh yeah, so somebody said, can you?
Okay, swap BTC for ETH, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually don't. Actually, not sure. I think, yeah, BTC has always been a good question because our founders ourselves, like I think a lot of people in the DeFi space have been very Ethereum focused for a long time, that we didn't really look into cross-chain or kind of having BTC to Ethereum swapping functionalities right within it. And we don't really have support for any Bitcoin-based wallets yet. So I would say I don't have an answer for you right off my mind. I'm also still learning every day. So I would suggest you to probably check that online.
By the way, if anybody wants to ask a question directly and not through the chat, click a little emoji on your screen, and when I see that, I'll make sure to call you out so that you can ask your question directly, over the video call. Somebody says, can you speak on either smart contracts like Forsage, which I'm not familiar with, and do you see the growth of DeFi and crowdfunding accelerating?
For the latter part of the question, hell yeah! Like I think it. I don't know about crowdfunding specifically, but with DeFi, I think especially after Ren and a few other protocols came out with like cross-chain assets with Bitcoin, there's been this new inflow of Bitcoin money into Ethereum where people are either looking to kind of yield farm on Compound, or people are just learning now about token sets and a lot of these other automated asset management strategies. And they're realizing that they no longer simply need to hold Bitcoin to actually, or Ether or any crypto for that matter to get the most returns or to even benefit the most. So, I mean, for the latter part of the question, yes, it's definitely scaling. And I don't have the most expertise and experience here to kind of say that with absolute certainty, but from what I've seen as a community advocate and from what I've seen helping the team with integrations, biz dev and operations, like the notion around DeFi has shifted more from an experimental kind of, it might fail thing in March to now it being more of a let's take on the big banks or big corporations kind of thing, which I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but it's definitely a shift in mindset that I think also trickles down to how the space itself is scaling.
Somebody asks, is there a recommended DeFi exchange to use with your hardware wallet? Which might need some clarification there.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can plug in, like, what hardware wallet are we talking about?
David, if you want to ask your question directly.
Well, so it looks like your platform, is it an exchange or is it more like Uniswap?
I would say it's somewhere in between, but probably more towards something like Uniswap. But we are also an aggregator, so you can use us as a portfolio tracker if you just want to use us. Yeah.
Are we loading our wallet? I mean, can I connect to your product with my hardware wallet, basically?
Yeah, no, I do know that we support a few hardware wallets, and
because I think I saw Ledger on there.
Yeah, you can connect Ledger
Treasure.
For sure.
Any idea on when you guys are supporting Treasure?
Good question. I will actually. I'm not sure exactly for that.
All good. All good. Okay.
Somebody says, what is the one most simple problem that DeFi solves today? For whom? Is there a way to describe that problem, a solution that is very simple language, and a solution that is in very simple language that a lay person would be able to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the person last week who delivered food to me in Buenos Aires, the Rappi driver, Rappi as we call it here, was using Zerion. And I think that goes to show, like, people here and in Venezuela especially, there's a huge DAI community and DeFi community as well, where that is one part of the use case, kind of coming back to the stable coins, the second point that I mentioned earlier, where this now provides a way for people in countries that have capital controls, in countries that have these huge restrictions around how money works and operates, to actually now store their money in something more secure because it's backed to a US dollar instead of, you know, it being a bolivar or peso that instantly loses money. And I think what's making it even better is now these users can actually access services such as getting loans, collateralized loans, services such as actually, you know, having a savings account, even if their savings is very minuscule in dollars. I feel like this shift in more of a borderless world is probably one of the most easiest to understand and grasp use cases of DeFi itself. But I also think it does point towards the bigger question marks in the DeFi space, which is mostly around regulation, which is mostly around, you know, things like KYC. I think it's very apt that we had Joe speak about that earlier. But probably even for me, like, the biggest question mark right now for DeFi and for kind of how the space is going to progress and move in the future is on how regulation would catch up. And I think ideally what would probably end up happening is this exists as a parallel layer to like the traditional banking system, and you have your own set of, you know, regulations around that. But on that front, I think for Zerion, we are like, our stance on regulation right now is, I think, a little more safer, because we are more of a portfolio aggregator. We don't really have any, you know, intermediation at all. So in that sense, at least we are a bit immune from what happens to the entire space.
Do you have an ETA on some of those new products that haven't been released yet?
So the ETA for our new Explore tab with the full interaction, as well as support, I think our website would be translated to a lot of languages. There'll be a bunch of new things integrated. It's supposed to be end of next month. So we are aiming for that, but it's all pending development. So that is the ETA for that. As for, you know, ETA around a lot of other projects, our interactive adapters will also be somewhere around next month. So that would be a big release for a lot of other protocols that are looking to integrate. And overall, I think for the rest of this year, the main roadmap is around really perfecting our product with the help of our power users. And, you know, kind of that's my job, basically, having a lot of really engaging user interviews. We've really scaled our community a lot in the last 2 months. So we are now more focused on building a product that is informed by what the core power users in DeFi want, along with inputs from, you know, people who are looking to get into crypto. So get into crypto and get into DeFi. So I think there's a balance of both, but mostly product focused.
Just a reminder for everybody, if you'd like to ask a question directly, there is a reactions button at the bottom of the screen. Zoom has a little button that says reactions. Put a reaction on your screen, and I'll call on you so that you can ask your question directly instead of me going through the chat. Somebody says, what's the main reason your early adopters have 5 to 10 active wallets, especially if there's 5 to 10 active Ethereum wallets? Why are they motivated not to consolidate?
So each, like, from what I've seen, and we've seen a bunch of different people from all kind of backgrounds using this as power users. People usually use one wallet for a specific function. It's as simple as that. I think they just like to, it just looks probably nicer when tracking in their spreadsheets, or it's probably just the way they like to do it. But what we see is one wallet where, you know, someone does yield farming, where they have a bunch of loans, and they kind of like put that to use in other places, and then some wallets only for token sets. So that's kind of what we've seen. I think it's more of a matter of personal preference, and yeah, and we are ready to, I mean, accommodate for that. But it's a good question. I also think, you know, it depends for different users. So that's, you know, there might be different reasons for sure.
Somebody says, can you discuss how the on-ramping and off-ramping out of and into dollars works?
Yeah, so right now for our fiat on-ramp, we don't have an off-ramp yet. We use MoonPay, which is the external on-ramp provider, and we just integrate them natively within our interface. So they do all the KYC. The fiat on-ramp obviously requires KYC. So it's kind of like just you buying on Coinbase. I believe it's a simple photo of an ID or something that you would probably need to upload when buying crypto, but the fees are comparable to that of Coinbase. So we added that. Like as of now, we don't have a lot of volume going through our fiat on-ramp at all, to be honest, because most of our users don't use us as a place where they want to start their crypto journey. Most users end up to us after doing research on different use cases that they want to be fulfilled with, and then they end up coming to Zerion. So like to answer your question, an off-ramp is on the roadmap, pending what MoonPay develops or pending any other off-ramp aggregator that we want to integrate who come out before that. So that is, that's probably the roadmap on that.
Next is a question. Besides sending money, what else are people mostly using this for?
A lot of really cool things, actually. One, making a lot of money. So a lot of leveraged traders using Zerion to manage their positions and to, I've seen some crazy support requests, man. Like people who've gone from 20K to like 120K in 2 months just through like, trading or doing some crazy things. I'm like, wow, I have access to what all you did. So I want to try to replicate that. But if I probably do that, nothing's going to work. So yeah, like that is one of the use case. I think another use case that I see from a lot of our Latin American users, especially, is just using Zerion to kind of, put their daily savings and salaries. A lot of people with life savings on Zerion who are completely DeFi native. I believe our founders are also completely DeFi native. They don't have a bank account. They don't, use. And right now with the additional layer of services, like you have Monolith, which enables you to get, a debit card with your DeFi where you can instantly spend that. And then you have platforms like Argent and Dharma that's making the whole on-ramp experience so easy for a non-DeFi user. I think there's an option for every use case now in the space, and these options are only getting better. And where Zerion positions ourselves is not for, not for like my grandmother or someone who doesn't kind of like have any experience with crypto, but we are positioned more for one, I guess, like DeFi power users who really value all the analytics and insights we give, and two, for people in the crypto space who are exploring DeFi, because I think for the crypto space, a lot of people are used to really good interfaces. They're used to really seamless, user interfaces as well as processes in general with their apps, and you don't really have the same functionality replicated in DeFi all throughout DeFi yet. So that is another main segment that we see coming to, and that's what we're tailored around.
A somewhat related question is, how many customers do you guys have?
I believe, so yeah, we've been scaling month over month. Our last month was the highest number of monthly active users across I think across, I don't want to misquote myself, but I think across the web, mobile apps, the Android and the Apple iPhone app, I think it was around 10 to 15,000 users. I would need to check Google Analytics again, but it's very, very small still. And I think it's in general, the overall space, I mean, you have around 200,000 monthly active users in the DeFi space last month, which was the highest so far. And these are monthly active users, not excluding DAI. For DAI, I believe you had around 362,000 monthly active users last month. And these are their all-time highs, and they've like scaled exponentially in the last few months. So these are the numbers for us, and these are the numbers for the overall space. And we're kind of like just scaling along with the space and catering for people who need us.
Somebody asks, does not taking custody of funds alleviate the burden of needing a money transmitter license?
I have no idea what that means. I'm sorry.
It might be, if Joe is still in the chat, do you think this is something you could talk about?
Yeah, I'm here. So basically, like you mentioned that you're not taking custody, but and which is like, one reason would be so you're not considered a money transmitter. You know, like there's all these people who are like getting in trouble for just like meeting at a coffee shop and exchanging Bitcoin for cash type thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm talking about from an application developer point of view, but you kind of already answered, because earlier I asked if we could add it on Lego. You said you can't, so maybe it's not relevant right now.
Yep.
Cool.
There you go.
Next question is, everything I hear is all about extremely complex financial speculation, and perhaps arbitrage on a subset of crypto assets. This person says, perhaps that is too simplistic. Please correct me if I'm misinterpreting.
I mean, it's a fair concern, right? Like I had the same concern coming into this space, but I don't have a great answer that's going to probably change you and convince you the other way. But what I can say is that like this is more of a pivotal time where, like I said earlier, kind of going to the aggregation theory, you've never had a situation ever in history where you could come up with your own economic models, put these economic models into financial instruments that people put value on, be it speculative or not. And then you suddenly find yourself in a space which just grown to $1.5 billion in total value locked currently. And this is a space which is probably frequented by 100,000 to 200,000 users so far. So kind of looking at all of these numbers, yes, there is a possibility that something might change and this all goes poof, but that's kind of the same argument that we've given for things like Bitcoin in the beginning. That's kind of the same argument we've given for a lot of things. And I believe that we are past the inflection point where, you know, these are self-serving entities. You see companies like MakerDAO, you see Kyber, you see 0x. These are not, you know, protocols anymore. These are more of like, even almost like cults in a sense, like where, you know, they have their own DAOs and they have their own like huge following of huge users, and they have a lot of money behind them, and institutions are also pouring in and VCs are also pouring in. I think this is something where even if it is mere speculation, it might be speculation in our current kind of like what we have right now. What we have right now might not be what ends up being DeFi. But what we have right now is definitely, I think, like the first step towards kind of what money itself would be redefined over the next decade. So that is probably a more high-level answer for what you asked.
There is a question request in person. David, you're up.
Yeah, hey there. So I jumped up in the app, turned it on, and connected my MetaMask. What I have a question on is, am I directly working with my MetaMask wallet, or do I actually have to deposit funds? Because I know that it asked me to deposit some stuff. And so,
do you? Just curious. Do you have any Ethereum balance in your MetaMask right now?
Right now, on that one account, I think I have like $3 worth, like 0.0 something.
Yeah, it's probably why it's asking you. I mean, because without Ethereum, like you really can't do anything because you need gas fees at the end of the day to transact. So I think it's probably some automated message that you get if you have below a certain balance.
So does this interact though with my existing wallet, or am I forced to basically deposit stuff into your guys' program?
Oh, if you have balance already, you can definitely track your portfolio and you can.
So you can track an existing wallet. We're not transferring stuff in. Okay, that's what.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, it looks cool. Thank you.
Cheers.
Somebody asked a question that was during your presentation, and I don't see any specific context. I just messaged you, so if you'd like to ask it over the voice, just private message me back or raise your hand via the reactions, and we'll get that question answered. Somebody asked, are you adding Trezor support? I think you went over, you know, that's something that maybe can be answered actually in your Discord from the developer. Can you put your contact info up again? What's the best way for people to reach you?
Oh, right. Actually, honestly, the best way for people to reach me is Discord, because it's a double win. You both join my group and you message me on there. So I'm going to put that in here. And if you haven't joined Discord yet, honestly, join it. It has a lot of really cool things going on. I've put the link there. Also, I noticed this question. Sorry, let me actually answer a question that can be answered. And I think that was more on our business model and how we make money. And I think that is also a very, very interesting question, because in the DeFi space, what we're noticing, what everyone's noticing, is that the whole concept of business models and making money is being redefined, because a lot of projects currently, especially projects like ours, are entirely VC funded, and we don't make any money as of now on our platform. And what we are, potentially, like, what the most likely direction in this, at least from our founders' perspective, is that we would, as we get more sophisticated in our product, we will reach a point where users, especially users who manage a large sum of funds on Zerion, would now be willing to, pay a monthly subscription or pay some kind of a fee for accessing 10% of premium services, while the rest of the people can access 90% of our services with, no issue whatsoever, and it's still scalable. That's probably the most likely direction in terms of business models, based on what we see right now, based on our assumptions right now. But I would say that take that with a grain of salt, because our investors, as well as like we ourselves, we are kind of like not focusing on, being revenue positive or even getting revenue at this point. I think it's more on like finding product market fit and really just scaling along with the space. And I think along with that, like definitely for business models, especially once we look to raise our Series A and kind of move from there, there would be a lot more, the discussion would become a lot more relevant then. So that is our current status on business model.